The Springfield apartment building at 14 Maple Street wasn't exactly the shining jewel of Illinois architecture, but it was home. At least, it was home for my mother and me. I, Elizabeth Thompson, age 57, found myself back under her roof after a series of unfortunate life events involving a failed business venture and a rather messy divorce. Mom, bless her heart, welcomed me with open arms and a pot of her famously strong coffee. It was convenient for both of us, really. She had company, and I had a place to land while I figured things out. We were on the 5th floor of a 6-story building. Nothing fancy, just a solid brick structure that had seen better days. Our building was one of 3 identical buildings managed by the same company. They were all connected by a central courtyard with a slightly overgrown rose garden and a communal grilling area. The kind of place where everyone knew your business, whether you wanted them to or not. And that brings me to Mr. M. He lived in the apartment directly below us. His name, as far as I knew, was just Mr. M. I always suspected it stood for something truly awful. Miserable, maybe, or meddlesome, perhaps even malevolent. He was, without a doubt, the most unpleasant person I had ever had the displeasure of sharing a building with. Mr. M. was a retired, well, I never quite figured out what he did. Something involving paperwork and a general air of superiority. He carried himself with the self-importance of a CEO, even though he was just a grumpy old man in a beige cardigan. He was perpetually displeased with something. The temperature was always too hot or too cold. The hallway lights were too bright or too dim. And God forbid you should accidentally drop something on the floor, the man would be pounding on our door within seconds, demanding to know if we were raising a herd of elephants up there. His favorite target, however, was our dog, Mick. Mick was a sweet, goofy golden retriever who loved everyone and everything, except for the occasional loud noise in the hallway. A slamming door, a dropped package, the sound of children playing, any of these could trigger a bark or two. Never at night, never excessively loud, and certainly not enough to warrant the level of drama Mr. M consistently manufactured. The building allowed pets, of course. Mom had made sure of that before we even considered moving in. And none of the other neighbors ever complained. In fact, most of them adored Mick, often stopping to pet him in the hallway or offer him a treat. But Mr. M acted as if Mick was single-handedly destroying the structural integrity of the building with his occasional woofs. To add insult to injury, Mr. M was also a local theater critic. A self-proclaimed one, anyway. I was involved with a small community theater group in Springfield. We weren't exactly Broadway material, but we put on some decent shows and had a lot of fun doing it. Mr. M, however, seemed to take personal pleasure in tearing our productions to shreds. His reviews were consistently scathing, filled with unnecessary personal attacks and petty criticisms. They were always the only negative reviews we ever received, too. I suspected he was doing it just to get under my skin. The real source of Mr. M's power, though, lay in his position as president of the Residents Association, or RA, for our 3 buildings. The RA wasn't a formal organization with any real legal authority. They couldn't dictate paint colors or landscaping choices, but they did have a say in the management of the common areas. The laundry room, the rose garden, the communal grill spot, all fell under their jurisdiction. They also had a small fund allocated by the management company for improvements and maintenance. Mr. M treated the RA like his own personal fiefdom. He made up arbitrary rules, ignored residents' requests, and generally acted like a petty tyrant. The RA consisted of Mr. M, the president, of course, his mostly blind wife, the secretary, and a handful of other neighbors who were either too apathetic to care or too easily swayed by Mr. M's, let's call it charm. He also had a knack for using the RA funds to buy them theater tickets and other small perks, ensuring their continued loyalty. Then there was Helen. Helen lived down the hall from us with her young son. She was a kind, hardworking single mother who was always willing to lend a hand. She also happened to be the RA's unofficial document filer. Mr. M's wife, bless her heart, wasn't exactly up to the task, given her vision impairment. Helen was the one who kept track of the minutes, filed the paperwork, and generally kept the RA from descending into complete chaos. Mom, having been a secretary, sales manager, and small business owner, had a knack for organization. She was the definition of a take-charge kind of woman. Helen, knowing this, would often ask Mom for help with the RA paperwork. I would often babysit Helen's son in the other room, while Mom and Helen would commiserate over Mr. M's latest antics. Mom would just shake her head and mutter about the incompetence of men in positions of power. She had years of experience dealing with such men, after all. I honestly can't remember how it came up, but Helen eventually mentioned that the annual complex-wide RA meeting was fast approaching. The meeting was a formality, a chance for residents to voice their concerns and nominate new members for the RA board. It was also, traditionally, a coronation ceremony for Mr. M. His wife would nominate him for president. Everyone would agree because no one else wanted the job, and then Mr. M. would appoint his wife as secretary. According to Helen, this charade had been playing out for years. A plan began to form in my mother's mind. I could see the wheels turning. A mischievous glint appeared in her eye, the same glint I'd seen when she was about to pull off some spectacular prank on my father back in the day. I wasn't actually at the meeting myself. The RA was never really my thing, but Mom filled me in on all the glorious details afterward. Fed up with Mr. M's petty tyranny, Mom had secretly conspired with Helen and a couple of other disgruntled residents. She might have even gotten Mr. M's wife on board. The woman was, by all accounts, a decent person, and I suspected she was secretly tired of being Mr. M's doormat. The day of the meeting arrived. The community room was packed. Several residents were there to voice complaints about everything from overflowing trash cans to noisy neighbors. Mom's presence didn't raise any eyebrows. She was known as a helpful, engaged resident. The meeting started with the election of officers. The air was thick with anticipation. Mr. M, looking smug and self-assured, opened the floor for nominations, and that's when Helen dropped the bomb. In a clear, confident voice, she nominated my mother, Elizabeth Thompson, for president of the Residents' Association. Mr. M's jaw dropped. He sputtered, choked, and stared at Helen in disbelief. Then he turned to his wife, a desperate plea in his eyes. He asked, a little too loudly, for any other nominations. Silence. He scanned the room, searching for a friendly face, someone who would nominate him and restore order to the universe. But no one met his gaze. The other residents seemed to be enjoying the spectacle a little too much. Defeated, Mr. M had no choice but to call for a vote. The vote was a landslide. A chorus of ayes filled the room, drowning out Mr. M's pathetic attempts to object. My mother, Elizabeth Thompson, was officially the new president of the Residents' Association. The aftermath was nothing short of legendary. Mom immediately set about reforming the RA. She implemented proper documentation procedures, established fair and transparent rules, and demanded an audit of the RA funds. She discovered that Mr. M had been using the money to pay for his own personal expenses, including those dreaded theater tickets. She demanded that he return the funds, which, after a great deal of sputtering and protesting, he eventually did. She put an end to the arbitrary rules and petty power plays. She listened to residents' concerns, addressed their needs, and generally made the building a better place to live. Mr. M, predictably, did not take the change in leadership well. He tried to stay on the RA, hoping to retain some semblance of power. But Mom wouldn't let him get away with his old tricks. According to her, he stormed out of the first official meeting, throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child. He wasn't seen at any subsequent meetings. The building owners were thrilled with Mom's performance. The other residents were grateful for her leadership. Even after I moved out, she continued to serve as president of the RA, often consulted for advice and guidance long after her term officially ended. She was respected, admired, and genuinely appreciated. Mom passed away 2 months ago. Cancer, that cruel and relentless thief, stole her from me far too soon. I miss her every single day. Her sharp wit, her unwavering strength, her infectious laughter, the world feels a little dimmer without her. But I take solace in the fact that she lived a full and meaningful life. She made a difference in the lives of those around her. And she had the satisfaction of knowing that she had thoroughly and completely vanquished her nemesis, Mr. M. Speaking of Mr. M, he kicked the bucket early last summer. I wouldn't normally speak ill of the dead, but in his case, I'm making an exception. The world is a better place without his negativity and his petty tyranny. Mom outlived him, and she won. She won the battle for the hearts and minds of the residents of 14 Maple Street. She won the war against bureaucratic incompetence and petty power grabs. And she won my eternal love and admiration. Silver linings, I suppose. Even in the midst of grief, there is always a silver lining to be found. And in this case, the silver lining is the memory of my mother, the woman who fearlessly took on a grumpy old man and his cronies and transformed a dysfunctional residents' association into a force for good. That's how my mother, Elizabeth Thompson, became the Queen of Springfield.